Ohio, and I'd like to introduce you to my 1957 NASCAR race car driven by Jack Smith, number 47 in 1957. Jack finished 5th in points in 1957 in the Grand National class and 5th in points in 1958 driving a 1957 Chevy. Back then you could actually drive the car for 2 years and still be in the stock Grand National class. The car has received a complete frame-off restoration and a lot of help from Jack Smith himself. Matter of fact, it's got been a rotisserie nut and bolt type restoration, and the car has several features that's different from other cars. If you'll notice the 6-lug wheels, it has 6-lug wheels, suspension, front and rear. It has 3 extra cross members instead of 1. It has 8 shocks instead of 4. It has a very special radiator. The radiator was specially fabricated for the cars. They actually used a Buick and Cadillac radiator and then modified that and made that for the radiator for this car. And it actually, by moving it over, they got an extra 15 degrees cooling. Of course, the Black Widows were all fuel injected. There was about 18 to 20 of them built, as what most records show. This one got the only options they really had was the power brakes, and the power brake had a special expansion cylinder for the fluid when it got hot, but everything else was something that you could buy across the board. It had instead of 4 inches, 5-inch intake. They had a special reinforcement on the back of the radiator in case it was in a minor wreck. It had like a, what you call almost a bungee cord today. They got this at the Air Force surplus store right across the street from Fedco, and that would hold the hood down, so if they had a minor wreck they could still proceed and race without any ado with the hood flying up on them. The car also has the exhaust, very special manifolds that were made just for the NASCAR cars. It was a cast iron in conjunction with Fenton Engineering. It was 4 into 2 and 2 into 1, and then it actually went through the frame and exited right behind the door. The rear end was very special, and it was a heavy-duty rear end made similar to the later rear ends like today. They were made with in 1965 called the Salisbury rear end. It was, of course, reinforced the top and bottom, and in case because back then the tracks were fairly rough, and you could actually bend the axles. It had 6 leaf springs instead of 5. It had, like I said, the drive shaft was reinforced, so in case it blew or a universal joint didn't come up and didn't dig into the road. I'm going to get the keys out, open the trunk. We have some other special features. You'll notice in the trunk there is no spare, of course. That was all filled in, and they had to take the spare out for one reason. Of course, they don't need a spare, but they had a special gas tank. They was allowed to use a 20-gallon gas tank, so it's got a very special gas tank just for the NASCAR race cars. Instead of 2 straps, it had 4. The intake neck, instead of going in with an O-ring, was actually welded to the tank. Filled still at the same place. The body had to be basically a stock car configuration. Everything else about the car is something that you can buy. Like I said, the real glass, real steel was all the same, except for the special suspension features and interior. On the interior, of course, we have a roll bar, a little bit different than today's roll bar. Let me get around here. And you can see the roll bar is it was actually went through the floor and fastened to the frame. And as you can see, the interior is fairly stock. They padded the steering wheel and put friction tape on the steering wheel so that the driver could get a better grip on it. The other nice features in the seat, very unique. This is the first time they've ever used this so-called bump put into the seat, and that because he's always making left turns, that kind of held the driver in place so that the seat belts weren't the only thing that was holding him in the seat. The shoulder harnesses were optional. They was, as you can see, they were surplus, airplane surplus also. But the seat belts were mandatory, but the shoulder harness they didn't have to wear that year. But the doors, well, the hole over there, you see the optional wear tire. Some of the cars, some of the drivers actually cut a hole in that spot so they could actually turn their head, look around, and see that edge of the tire to see how it was wearing, whether they need to come in or not. They didn't have radios that they could call in and make their changes and have a big pit crew that was going to change it. There was another one up front that did the same. They looked at the front tire, and the guy just looked through there and he could actually see the tire. The rest of the interior was fairly stock. Of course, these were no backseat cars for weight. This was the lightest 57 body that was made in those days. There was no armrest for him. It was heater delete, radio delete, cigarette lighter delete. It was made for racing. When I interviewed Jack several times, Jack was very instrumental in to remember every race that he lost and the reason that he lost. He had one race that he actually broke 2 shocks off. But most drivers, he didn't remember the races that he really won. But he was more, it seemed he could always remember the ones that he lost. And I talked to other drivers, old drivers, and it seems that's kind of the way it is. They always remember the ones they lost. Where he ran out of gas, got a hole in the gas tank one time, and various things like that broke that caused him to actually have to drop out of the race. But he still finished 5th in points in number 47. And with that, concludes, I think, everything on the car. What we're looking at now, all the lettering was put on by hand, brush painted by a old painter that used to do lettering on race cars. They're not spray painted, they're put on just exactly like they were in 1957. Everything is trying to be duplicated to the utmost quality and ability that we had. The car has scored 997 at the last Nationals, and it's been several concours, the Elegance, and it's always won first place.